Hey friends, hope you're all doing well. We're doing okay too, just really tired since we've been working non-stop. We wanted to answer a question many of you ask: how does our publishing process work? Most of our audiobooks are first posted on Patreon as paid content. They stay behind a paywall for a few months. After that, they become free to access on Patreon forever. Then, a few weeks later, we upload them to other platforms like YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, X. Lately, our community hasn't been growing much, and we could really use your help. Please share our site in your Facebook groups, Discord servers, Reddit threads, Twitter, X, or with any friends who might be interested. Every little bit helps and we really appreciate it. Thanks a lot for being with us and supporting what we do. Chapter 1: Super Farming System Activated. Suming, if you want to marry my daughter, you'll need to provide 500,000 as betrothal gifts. Furthermore, you must buy a 150 square meter house in a second ring road, and the property's owner can only be my daughter. The house should be well decorated, and while we can live there, your parents are not allowed. You must also own a car worth at least 200,000 yuan. On top of that, you will be responsible for your brother-in-law's 4 years of college tuition and living expenses. Additionally, you will cover his wedding expenses in the future. Standing in the living room, Suming frowned upon hearing his mother-in-law's conditions. Andy, didn't we agree on 300,000 as the betrothal gift? You won't accept it? Li Qiuhua slammed the table, her tone dripping with sarcasm. Zhu is attractive and well-educated. It's an honor for you, a countryside dweller, that she took a liking to you. Besides, she's carrying your child. My son just started university, so we need a lot of money. If you don't have money, you won't be able to get married. You should go back to your parents' farm. Li Qiuhua was aggressive. Suming was seething with anger upon hearing this, but he clenched his fists and gritted his teeth, forcing himself to swallow his rage. A month ago, Suming went to a bar and met Wang Zhu. They had a pleasant conversation, got carried away with drinking, and woke up together in the same bed. Later, Wang Zhu said that she was pregnant. Suming's parents were overjoyed upon hearing the news. They worked diligently and borrowed money, managing to gather 300,000 yuan to support their marriage. A while ago, Suming had already covered the expenses for Li Qiuhua's house renovations and electrical appliances. Today, he came officially to propose marriage. Originally, the agreed amount was 300,000 yuan. However, they unexpectedly increased the price to 500,000 yuan and introduced several additional conditions. Suming explained, I have already paid for the renovation of your house and the household appliances. I truly don't have any extra money. Nevertheless, I promise to work hard to earn more in the future. Impossible. Li Qiuhua displayed a disgusted expression and rolled her eyes. Is it just because our home renovation cost over 100,000 yuan? The son-in-law from the old Su family next door went ahead and bought a house worth over 1 million yuan for his mother-in-law. Don't you feel embarrassed in comparison? Suming was at a loss for words. She didn't seem to have this attitude when he paid for the refrigerator, color TV, and air conditioner, did she? At that time, she affectionately called him son-in-law. Zhu. Suming looked at Wang Zhu for help. Don't look at me. Wang Zhu lowered her head, engrossed in her phone. I'm a girl, so I should listen to my mother. Whatever she says is true. After Wang Zhu finished speaking, she sneered in her heart. If she hadn't accidentally become pregnant last month while out with friends and now desperately needed a father for the child in her belly, she would never willingly marry Suming. Suming clenched his fists and teeth. Suming, I have no other choice. My brother is getting married soon, and he needs at least 500,000 yuan. This is for his future marriage. Wang Zhu continued, this price is very fair to you. Detected that Li Qiuhua and Wang Zhu are looking down on farmers. Activating the farm system. The system will provide you with 5 million in cash. Activate mission. Chapter 2: Give you 2 slaps. Mission 1, accept Li Qiuhua's demands and become her family's servant for life. However, this system will vanish forever. Mission 2, reject their unreasonable request and give them a resounding slap to release the host's frustration. Mission reward, permanently activate the farm system. The system has noted that the host hasn't had any intimate relations with a woman. Host, don't worry. This system possesses incredible capabilities. It will undoubtedly make you stronger than ever. Suming was taken aback upon receiving the system's notification. Suming, an avid reader of novels, had never expected to actually trigger a system like this. Li Qiuhua, Wang Zhu, did you really look down on me? He pondered. I'll make you regret it. The system had just revealed that Suming had never been intimate with any girl. Therefore, the child in Wang Zhu's belly couldn't be his. Nothing had ever happened between him and Wang Zhu. When his parents had gone to ask for financial help, Li Qiuhua rudely turned them away. Suming was filled with rage. The kind of plot that usually only occurred in novels or TV dramas had unexpectedly become his reality. Suming had been trying his best to tolerate Lee Qiue's unreasonable demands and her mistreatment of his parents. All because he believed that the child in Wang Zu's womb was his. However, he was now certain that this child had no connection to him whatsoever. I choose mission 2. Suming said in his mind. Mission chosen. Host, please complete it as soon as possible. I can agree to your conditions. Suming immediately felt relieved. But I have a small request. Lee Qiue rolled her eyes and snorted coldly. Do you have money? Show me the money first. Alright. Suming took out his phone and opened a message just received from the bank. Take a look. Lee Qiue glanced at it dismissively, but as she read it carefully, her eyes widened. 5 million? Lee Qiue stood up abruptly, asking, where did you get so much money? Being aware that Suming came from the countryside and didn't have much money, she believed he wouldn't be able to meet her request. Suming would probably beg her to sign another premarital agreement. Such an agreement would make Suming a virtual slave to her family. However, she never expected Suming to genuinely be wealthy. Could he possibly be a hidden rich second-generation heir? You're truly talented and promising. Zhu is indeed very fortunate. Lee Qiue smiled broadly, saying, then let's pick a good date for the wedding. Wang Zhu was also taken aback. Being quite materialistic, she quickly approached and said, darling, why didn't you tell me you were rich? Chapter 3 My farm is very expensive. Suming's smile was faint. Had I revealed my wealth earlier, would you have confessed to me about carrying another man's child? Wang Zhu was taken aback, her complexion instantly draining. How did you find out? Before Wang Zhu could complete her sentence, Suming's hand struck across her face forcefully. This slap is for your deception. Lee Qiue also stood shocked. When did Suming uncover the truth? Suming's palm connected hard with Lee Qiue's cheek too. This slap is for your disdain toward my parents and their 100,000 yuan investment in renovation and appliances. Wang Zhu, I will never be with an unscrupulous woman like you. You aim to get rich through marriage. Only a fool would fall into your scheme. Suming swung open the door and departed. Lee Qiue and Wang Zhu were left staring at each other, a sense of deep regret settling in. Congratulations, host, for completing the mission. Activate the farm system. You have automatically received the system reward. 2 acres of farm have been issued. The farm is located on the south side of the Guoxing building. Wait. This place is the city center. East Sea City was situated by the sea, boasting a thriving economy that earned it the status of a first-tier city. The heart of the city was exceedingly pricey. Could the system truly possess such immense power? Having conducted business discussions at Guoxing building previously, Suming possessed a vague grasp of it. The villa enclave at the city's core commanded a staggering 250,000 yuan per square meter. Rent for commercial space in the mall reached an astonishing 120,000 yuan per square meter. Even residential neighborhood situated 3 kilometers from Guoxing building demanded 60,000 yuan per square meter. And these prices solely pertained to housing. The cost of the land was even more exorbitant. Suming didn't believe it. Suddenly, a large book appeared in Suming's hand. Land title deed. Suming sat on the edge of the flower bed by the side of the road and hurriedly flipped open the large book. The location and area of his farm were clearly recorded in the book. Suming's name was written on the owner's column. Too amazing. Suming laughed. The shop can recycle all farm products. The host will receive different rewards. The farm will greatly shorten the growing time of the crops. Special items will be hidden. Only the host can see them. Farmer, Suming, level 1, experience point, 0 out of 100 experience point, farm, level 1. A series of notifications offered Suming a general sense of the situation. If the system could recycle crops, it should also grant him rewards. Suming had full faith that the system's produce would be of the utmost quality. With this in mind, Suming felt an irresistible urge to pay a visit. Battling his excitement, Suming hailed a taxi and made his way to the city center. To Guoxing building, please, he requested. The taxi driver was remarkably enthusiastic. I really envy you folks. You must be making around 50 or 60,000 yuan a month there, right? Chapter 4 Farming in the center of the city. It's no wonder the driver was envious. Those fortunate enough to be employed at the Guoxing building were all high-caliber professionals, so Suming must be receiving excellent treatment. He could sit in the office, basking in the air conditioning. Such comfort. Surely, this was much preferable to driving a taxi. No. Suming shook his head. I'm going to do some farming. What? The driver burst into laughter. Young man, don't tease. How could you possibly be farming there? The driver chuckled and shook his head, assuming Suming was jesting. However, upon arriving, he was taken aback to discover an actual farm here. It spanned around 2 acres and was overgrown with weeds. It was astonishing that what this guy had said turned out to be true. The driver suddenly recalled that there was indeed an abandoned land resembling a farm next to the Guoxing building. Initially curious about why it hadn't been developed, he had grown accustomed to its presence over the past decade. Just now, he had unconsciously overlooked it. So this piece of land belonged to this young man? If this was accurate, then his feat was truly remarkable. Should he sell this parcel of land, he'd acquire a fortune far beyond what he could spend in several lifetimes. However, the driver remained skeptical. Could this young man be joking? Suming paid the driver and disembarked from the car, striding toward the farm. The driver stood bewildered. What he had claimed was the unvarnished truth. Suming surveyed his surroundings. This place appeared somewhat run down, with grass and dust scattered about. Marvelous. He had genuinely risen to the status of a top billionaire. His parents had toiled in the countryside throughout their lives. Now, it was their turn to embrace city life and enjoy its comforts. Adjacent to the city center stood the Guoxing building. Beside it stretched the 12-lane dual carriageway, and in its rear were a cluster of banks and the headquarters of major corporations. The value of this plot of land was considerable. Suming sensed that this location wasn't too shabby. He envisioned planting flowers and greenery here, constructing a modest abode to inhabit. From this point forward, he could observe the hustle and bustle of office-goers passing daily, all while he lounged contentedly on a rocking chair, soaking up the sunlight. What a wonderful prospect. Suming commenced his initial inspection of the farm. The area covered approximately 1,300 square meters. The place was overgrown with wild vegetation, indicating that it had remained untended for numerous years. Adjacent to it stood a thatched hut, containing merely a bed and a table. Despite its simplicity, the room was impeccably clean. It appeared as if the system had thoughtfully arranged this space for Suming's rest. An outdoor water tap was also available beside the thatched hut. When Suming turned the faucet, water flowed out. The presence of water and electricity here made things extremely convenient. Hailing from the countryside, Suming possessed substantial experience in farm work. Farming came naturally to him. Yet, although he could manually clear away the grass, it was an incredibly slow process. Furthermore, he lacked any seeds. The absence of seeds would hinder his farming efforts. He unlocked his phone and scrutinized the map. Gazing at the map for an extended period, Suming felt disheartened. This location sat right at the heart of the city. Nonetheless, acquiring farming tools and seeds here would prove to be quite a challenge. Indeed, cultivating crops amidst the city's bustle seemed implausible. Boarding a taxi and enduring nearly 90 minutes of travel, he eventually stumbled upon a store that dealt in farming equipment. "Young man, what can I assist you with?" Taking in the sun's rays, the shop owner lounged near the entrance. Given the time of year, there weren't many customers, so things were fairly quiet. "I'm looking to purchase farming tools, seeds, and fertilizers." "Of course." Springing to his feet, the shopkeeper motioned for Suming to follow him inside. Chapter 5 Puzzled boss. Before long, Suming selected an array of farming tools and acquired a substantial quantity of seeds and fertilizer. It was evident that a taxi couldn't accommodate such a bulk. "Boss, could you assist me in transporting these items home?" "I'll cover the transportation costs." Suming looked to the boss for approval. "Absolutely, no problems." The boss readily nodded. Suming transferred 500 yuan to the taxi driver, considering the 3-hour effort. The taxi driver departed contentedly, while the shop owner fetched a shabby van from the adjacent warehouse. He loaded up the farming tools, fertilizer, and seeds. "Where are you going?" the owner inquired as he joined Suming in the vehicle. "This is the address." Suming transmitted the location. "Are you pulling my leg?" The city center was dominated by towering buildings, where every inch of land held immense value. Farming in the city center was inconceivable. Suming found himself at a loss. Yet, he couldn't blame the boss for this skepticism. Initially, he had his own doubts. Suming promptly made the payment using his phone. "Boss, I've already made the payment. If I'm misleading you, you can return the goods." "What do you say?" The boss was taken aback. Was this some novel game for the wealthy? "All right." The boss concurred. They reached their destination within an hour and a half. The boss alighted from the vehicle and surveyed the surroundings. Indeed, there was a farm here. The boss stood in awe. "Unload the cargo," Suming instructed with a smile. "Okay." The boss promptly began unloading. Thoughts raced through his mind as he worked. Had Suming truly established a farm here? Could the agricultural industry be the next big moneymaker? If Suming was privy to these musings, he would likely be torn between laughter and exasperation. Wealth wasn't his goal. All he desired was to be a farmer. Suming rolled up his sleeves and began clearing the area of weeds. He labored for around 3 hours. He managed to tidy up an expanse of roughly 100 square meters. 2 acres of land was no trifling matter. What should he cultivate? Su-ming pondered. He proceeded to the seed storage and, shutting his eyes, selected a handful of seeds. When he opened his eyes, he saw that they were hairy bamboo seeds. The system had assured him that crops grown here would mature considerably faster. Su-ming eagerly awaited the outcome. He quickly completed the planting. Hairy bamboo successfully planted. Harvest time, 12 hours. Chapter 6 being ripe in 12 hours. Su-ming was stunned at that moment. He had mentally prepared himself. Matter might require about a week or 2 to reach maturity. However, he hadn't anticipated it reaching maturity within 12 hours. The system's power was truly astonishing. Su-ming stood in disbelief, his mouth agape. The crops covering such an expansive piece of land could yield 2 harvests in a single day. He might soon become the principal vegetable supplier in the entire city. Furthermore, the produce cultivated on this land was certain to be of exceptional quality. It was unexpected that despite his parents investing heavily to send him to a major city for education, he ended up as a farmer. But farmers, too, could rake in substantial earnings. Additionally, Su-ming swiftly realized that apart from vegetables, he could plant other items. For instance, certain special plants with lengthy maturation periods. Setting aside any other functionalities, the mere fact that this plot of land could significantly accelerate crop growth was enough for Su-ming to amass a fortune. As Su-ming was lost in thought, he observed the seed he had recently planted sprouting. The speed was astonishing. Host, you can boost crop output through watering and fertilization, or reduce the time needed for crops to ripen. The system's notification suddenly chimed in. Su-ming felt elated and promptly fetched a bucket of water to irrigate the crops. Crop growth time reduced by 1 hour. Crop ripening quality increased by 10%. Every time he watered the plants, a notification echoed. However, there was no alert when he watered them again. It appeared he could only water them at intervals. Su-ming meticulously applied fertilizer, each time greeted by the sound of a notification. After a whole afternoon of work, the sky was gradually dimming. Su-ming stretched his body and washed his dirt-covered hands and feet. All he had to do now was wait for the crops to reach maturity. Amid the rush hour, the streets bustled with white-collar workers donned in blue attire. Finding a restaurant, Su-ming ordered a bowl of noodles and, in an unusually lavish manner, added a meat dish. He dug into his meal with hearty bites. He didn't plan on returning to his rented house tonight. On the farm, there stood a small thatched cottage where he could sleep at any time, allowing him to rise early and tend to the crops. Yet, thoughts of the house made Su-ming scratch his head. The rented place he used to inhabit was no longer suitable. The rent wasn't cheap, and the living conditions were far from ideal. Were it not for his cost-saving marriage, he wouldn't have settled for such a subpar dwelling. However, that was all in the past. After sating his hunger, he purchased some snacks and fruits before heading back to the thatched cottage. After fiddling with his phone for a bit, he slipped into a deep sleep. In today's world, people often wrestled with insomnia due to stress and a lack of physical labor. Yet, after a day's work in the fields, how could one not sleep soundly? When he awoke, dawn had already broken. In a sleepy daze, Su-ming grabbed his phone and checked the time. It was already 10 in the morning. The crops had ripened long ago. Su-ming jumped out of bed in a hurry. He didn't even bother washing his face before flinging open the door and dashing toward the field. What would he find? Su-ming's excitement knew no bounds. From a distance, the plot still appeared as an empty space. There was no sign of the crops. Su-ming was momentarily stunned, thinking he might be mistaken. But then, he recalled that the system probably orchestrated this. After all, the crops maturing in a single day was astonishingly rapid. The system likely intervened to keep things discreet. Chapter 7 Golden Bamboo Shoots. As Su-ming stepped in to inspect, his eyes widened in astonishment. Behold, a bamboo shoot had emerged. Surprisingly, the final sprout from the furry bamboo seed wasn't just any bamboo shoot, but rather a bamboo shoot. Bamboo itself had little value, only bamboo shoots were fit for consumption. Remarkably, it had already matured within a single night. Filled with joy, Su-ming entered the ground, grabbed a shovel, and commenced digging. Undoubtedly, he felt a tad fatigued. Nevertheless, he swiftly unearthed a bamboo shoot. Why was it so weighty? Su-ming found himself puzzled. Picking it up, he examined it closely. There was nothing amiss upon first glance. Traces of his shovel were apparent around the base of the bamboo shoot. Back then, he hadn't scrutinized it closely. Intriguingly, there was a golden hue within. Su-ming rapidly peeled back the skin of the bamboo shoot to get a better view. When Su-ming fully comprehended it, he was rendered nearly speechless by shock. Was the bamboo shoot actually golden? Among the golden bamboo shoots, a label was attached. Su-ming took the label and examined it with care. It contained details about the purchase number, purity, weight, and other relevant information concerning the bamboo shoots. A Walton Bank commemorative bamboo shoot, marked with the purchase number 123,456. Weighing 4,000 grams, it possessed a purity of 99.99%. Su-ming pinched his thigh, experiencing a sensation of pain. Su-ming aspired to be a diligent farmer. The extent of the system's potency caught him off guard. The bamboo shoots he cultivated were, astonishingly, made of gold. Su-ming found himself profoundly taken aback. Today, he had harvested golden bamboo shoots from the earth. Laborers were indeed the most honorable. What truly stood out was the fact that the bamboo shoots came complete with labels and purchase certificates. Su-ming blinked, slowly recovering from his initial astonishment. He moistened his dry lips. With a sense of excitement, he grasped the golden bamboo shoot. The weight was substantial. Regardless of its weight, his joy was boundless. After all, this wasn't just gold, but rather treasure, distinct from construction site bricks. The excitement within Su-ming was irrepressible. The weariness from the previous day's labor had dissolved. Gazing at the extensive uncultivated land, his eyes ignited with enthusiasm. A fervor to experiment with all sorts of crops, be it cucumbers, potatoes, or melons, welled up inside him. He was eager to witness how these crops would flourish on his land. However, the moment wasn't right for such endeavors. Despite these bamboo shoots being golden, they held no immediate utility for him. After all, if he desired more bamboo shoots later, he could simply cultivate them anew. In any case, these bamboo shoots required a mere 10 hours to mature. Therefore, he intended to sell these golden bamboo shoots. Originating from Walton Bank, the nation's largest bank, these bamboo shoots were of immense worth. It was probable that other banks would express interest in purchasing them. With this thought in mind, Su-ming promptly retrieved his phone, accessing the number for Danzō Bank through 114. Amongst local establishments, Danzō Bank held the distinction of being the largest. "Greetings, sir. This is the Danzō Bank Consultation Center." Upon dialing, a pleasant and courteous female voice emanated from the opposite end. "I have an inquiry. I possess a collection of commemorative bamboo shoots released by Walton Bank. Is your bank open to procuring them?" "Sir, kindly hold for a moment. This query surpasses my authority. I shall promptly confer with our president." The tone of the young lady grew significantly more respectful. In under half a minute, a male voice interjected. "Hello, sir. I am the president of the East Sea branch of Danzō Bank. We are prepared to acquire any quantity of Walton Bank's commemorative bamboo shoots that you have." "Very well." Upon receiving the affirmation, Su-ming concluded the call. Su-ming couldn't help but sigh at the prospect of becoming a billionaire. Chapter 8. I need a big truck. Su-ming consulted the map. Danzō Bank stood 3 kilometers away from his current location. A bit of a distance, indeed. Standing upright, Su-ming began counting methodically. Precisely 50 bamboo shoots lay before him. Each of these weighed 4 kilograms, summing up to a total of 200 kilograms. The thought of transporting them all individually to Danzō Bank would likely exhaust him. Contemplating the situation, Su-ming recognized the need to purchase a vehicle. Although his work revolved around farming, making a tractor the obvious choice, navigating through the city center posed limitations for tractors. Anticipating considerable future crop growth, a truck was necessary. The question was, where could he acquire one? It struck Su-ming that the vendor who sold seeds and fertilizers yesterday might have useful contacts. While not dealing in cars, he might have a connection or two who did. Su-ming only needed to provide funds for the purchase, and the car would be arranged. He placed a call to the vendor. "What do you require now?" "No worries, I have an assortment here. Simply tell me what you need, and I'll get it delivered to you promptly." The vendor displayed remarkable enthusiasm. This was due to Su-ming's status as an affluent urban farmer. "I need a truck, boss," Su-ming conveyed. "No problem, I'll take care of it," the vendor assured confidently. The vendor posed an inquiry. "Any specific configuration preferences for the vehicle?" "No specific demands." "All right." The vendor readily agreed. Upon ending the call, Su-ming fetched a small cart from the thatched hut. He systematically loaded the golden bamboo shoots onto the cart and wheeled it to the farm's periphery. Precisely when he'd aligned all 50 bamboo shoots at the farm's edge, a truck pulled up by the entrance. Stepping out from the driver's seat was the vendor. It was a compact white van with a 4-ton capacity, sufficient for his needs. "Is this vehicle suitable?" The vendor handed Su-ming the keys, a smile gracing his features. "Not bad. What's the price?" 200,000. Su-ming nodded, transferring 210,000 yuan to the vendor while stating, "The extra 10,000 is your commission." The boss's eyes lit up. He was so lucky. He had only been Su-ming's driver for a while, but he had earned 10,000 yuan. Su-ming was indeed rich. He was too generous. "Thank you, sir," Then I won't bother you anymore. Recognizing that Suming probably had other matters to attend to, the boss didn't disturb him. He turned and hailed a taxi. Suming skillfully maneuvered the car backward into his farm. Proceeding, he carefully stacked the golden bamboo shoots, one by one. He loaded all 50 of the precious bamboo shoots into the car before sealing the door. With everything set, he was ready to depart. Suming drove the vehicle to the farm entrance and configured the GPS location on his phone. Just then, an unexpected knock resounded on his car door. Lowering the window, Suming peeked outside. Standing there was a slightly portly middle-aged man, dressed in a chef's uniform. An air of self-assurance surrounded him. "Excuse me, sir, but what do you have in your car?" "Bamboo shoots." Suming hesitated momentarily before replying. "Bamboo shoots?" The middle-aged man's eyes widened, a spark of delight evident. "What a coincidence. Our company's cafeteria is currently short on bamboo shoots. Sir, are you selling these bamboo shoots? What's the price?" The middle-aged man was a culinary expert in a major corporation and was responsible for its vegetable procurement. With local vendors always seeking to curry his favor, he couldn't help but adopt a slightly conceited demeanor. On this particular morning, he had planned to venture out and buy bamboo shoots. However, as soon as he stepped out of the company, his gaze landed on a parked truck by the curb. Being well versed in vegetable purchasing, he recognized the refrigerated truck with a local license plate as likely carrying fresh produce. Should there be bamboo shoots on the truck, he could bypass his market trip. His intuition didn't fail him. The man couldn't help but smile. Luck was evidently on his side. Chapter 9 My Bamboo Shoots. Suming found himself momentarily stunned. If he were to cook with his bamboo shoots, it would undoubtedly result in the company employees needing dental work. This misunderstanding was enough to make Suming unsure whether to laugh or sigh. He shifted his gaze downwards. His attire was a simple cotton outfit, splotched with mud. He truly resembled a vegetable vendor. "Selling the bamboo shoots to me would be a profitable deal for you." Observing Suming's silence, the middle-aged man added, "The market rate for these bamboo shoots is 6.3 yuan per jin. Would you consider selling them to me at 6.5 yuan per jin?" The middle-aged man's words placed Suming in an amusing dilemma. Even though the company would reimburse him, he shouldn't have amassed so many discounts. Yet, this wasn't Suming's concern. Had he actually had bamboo shoots, he might have sold some. However, he had no bamboo shoots on hand. "I apologize. I'm not selling these bamboo shoots." Suming had no choice but to decline with a good-natured smile. The middle-aged man appeared slightly displeased. "If your bamboo shoots are of good quality, I'll be your consistent buyer." "How does that sound?" "I really have no intention of selling these bamboo shoots." Suming was rendered momentarily speechless. A frown creased the middle-aged man's brow. His tenacity was evident. 7 yuan per catty. Would that suffice? "You're quite the hard bargainer." Suming shook his head. With so many vegetable vendors around, why hadn't he found another option? What was driving him to be so unyielding? His bamboo shoots were priced per gram. At over 400 yuan per gram. "You truly might not be able to afford my bamboo shoots." Suming spoke the truth. The middle-aged man was taken aback, then erupted into a laughing fit mixed with frustration. "Are you kidding me? Do you think your bamboo shoots are made of gold?" His intuition had been spot on. "I refuse to believe I can't afford your bamboo shoots." The middle-aged man promptly unzipped his bag, revealing a stack of bills. "Is this amount sufficient?" His persistence was unwavering. He was a purchaser for a prominent corporation. That morning, he had indulged in a bit of alcohol before heading to work. The company he worked for had 2,000 or 3,000 employees, leading to a considerable daily demand for vegetables. Every vegetable vendor was eager to transact with him. But today, he had encountered a resolute young man. He wasn't convinced that he couldn't afford it. "Never mind the bamboo shoots, I could probably buy your car." As he continued speaking, the middle-aged man furiously reached for the car door. Suming felt genuinely helpless. Why was he so stubborn? Chapter 10 Parking illegally. Just as the middle-aged man was about to wrench open the rear door, he vented his frustration. "I'm curious to know how pricey your bamboo shoots are, and yet you claim I can't afford them." In a sudden turn of events, a hand materialized, pressing onto the door. Suming addressed him. "Uncle, I've been clear that I won't be selling these bamboo shoots. You can't coerce me into selling, can you? If I persist in wanting your bamboo shoots, what will you do to stop me?" Drunk and confrontational, the middle-aged man glared at Suming, attempting to shove him aside. Suming's brows knitted. Suming wondered, is this middle-aged man spoiling for a fight? Extending his hand, Suming caught the middle-aged man's wrist, applying force to pull it towards him. Subsequently, he aimed a swift kick. The kick squarely struck the middle-aged man's abdomen. The impact sent the middle-aged man stumbling a few steps backward, tumbling to the ground. Grimacing in pain, the middle-aged man cast a fierce gaze at Su-ming, snarling, "You dare to lay hands on me? What's happening here?" Just then, a stern voice pierced through. Su-ming turned his head, noticing two policemen in uniform making their way over with grave expressions. Within the city center, this location epitomized the city's image. The vicinity boasted towering structures with a constant stream of visitors. Not only were there local patrons, but foreign visitors and dignitaries from other cities also frequented this area. Any brawling here would undoubtedly tarnish the city's image. As the two patrolling officers drove by, they spotted the situation and promptly approached. The middle-aged man exclaimed, "Officers, you're here just in time." The middle-aged man spoke up first, saying, "This individual parked in a restricted area. I advised him against it, explaining how it affects the city's appearance. Yet, not only did he disregard my words, but he also resorted to aggression. This bamboo shoot peddler actually dared to drive right into the city center." Su-ming was rendered speechless. He was the one who insisted Su-ming sell the bamboo shoots, yet now all the blame seemed to rest on Su-ming's shoulders alone. Upon hearing this, the two officers furrowed their brows and turned their gaze to Su-ming. Being seasoned patrollers, they recognized that relying solely on one-sided claims was unwise. "I indeed have bamboo shoots in my car, but this plot of land belongs to me. Would it not be within my rights to park my vehicle on my own property? Furthermore, I had no intention of selling these bamboo shoots." However, he persisted in pressuring me. He even resorted to pushing me just a while ago. I was merely defending myself. Su-ming recounted the truth. "Bullshit." The middle-aged man sneered, "You can't even fabricate a proper lie. Do you have any idea about the value of this land? If this land is indeed yours, I'd eat shit right away." Su-ming chuckled upon hearing this. This individual was being quite reckless. In reality, the two patrolling officers were skeptical of Su-ming's account as well. Not that they underestimated him. But, could a young man like him really afford such a pricey piece of land in the city center? With no one willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, Su-ming had no choice but to present his property ownership certificate. Property ownership certificate. The two policemen stood momentarily dazed. After scrutinizing it closely, astonishment overtook their faces. It was indeed true. This piece of land unequivocally belonged to the young man before them. Good gracious, the person standing there was a billionaire. It appeared that nobody could prevent him from parking on the property. The middle-aged man craned his neck to glimpse the property ownership certificate. He was left utterly stupefied. Dear heavens! The ownership of this house genuinely lay with the young man. Subsequently, Su-ming strolled to the rear of his car, opening the door. "Gentlemen, take a look at my bamboo shoots." The two policemen exchanged glances and proceeded over. As they peered within, their eyes widened. The middle-aged man also yearned to approach and inspect the contents, but Su-ming promptly closed the car door. "Officers, this is the protocol." Su-ming presented his purchase certificate as well. All the documents were completely lawful and aligned with the requisite procedure. The two policemen remained astounded. Yet, upon careful consideration, it seemed reasonable. Since the central city land belonged to him, owning these golden bamboo shoots was hardly perplexing. Nevertheless, this young man was exceedingly affluent. Chapter 11. Nothing to say. One of the patrolling officers gulped. "Is he trying to rob you for your belongings?" He gestured toward the middle-aged man as he spoke. "Yeah, he is attempting to forcefully open my car door without my consent." Su-ming offered a faint smile. The two officers exchanged glances. Abruptly, the officer on the left produced an electric baton and applied pressure against the middle-aged man's body. A twitch coursed through the middle-aged man. Following that, the two patrol officers subdued the middle-aged man to the ground. Gradually, the middle-aged man regained consciousness. His eyes met the furious stares of the two patrollers. Handcuffs secured his wrists. What was happening? "What are you doing?" Struggling, the middle-aged man queried. Yet, a patrolling officer from behind seized his neck. "Stay still. Come take a look." The two officers guided him toward the back of the car, where Su-ming had unlocked the door. The middle-aged man's eyes widened as he glimpsed the car's contents. He had been right. Those bamboo shoots were genuinely crafted from gold. "You are suspected of attempted robbery, involving a substantial sum." The middle-aged man stood bewildered. He had become a captive just like that? "Allow me to explain. It's not as it appears." Silence. One of the policemen barked, "You forcibly opened the car door without authorization. Now, with irrefutable evidence, you still intend to argue?" The middle-aged man near tears. He was incredibly unfortunate. He had merely intended to purchase a bamboo shoot. It made sense why Su-ming had refused to sell to him. Su-ming even asserted he couldn't afford the bamboo shoots. Initially, He had believed Su-ming acted deliberately. Yet now, reflecting, Su-ming's words had proven accurate. His current predicament was a consequence of his disbelief in Su-ming. The issue lay in no one trusting him. A young man owning a considerable plot in the city center was difficult to believe. Further puzzling was the fact that if others possessed golden bamboo shoots, they would cautiously stash them in basements, fearing exposure. Nobody would be as casual as Su-ming, placing them in his car. Couldn't you keep these golden bamboo shoots at home? Are you intentionally causing trouble? The middle-aged man was on the verge of tears. I apologize. Su-ming offered a faint smile. These items consume a lot of space. I'm planning to sell them. Even the two patrolmen were rendered speechless. Were all affluent individuals this capricious? Chapter 12 You can't park here. The middle-aged man was close to tears. He had simply stepped out to buy a bamboo shoot. And now, he had unexpectedly encountered an understated tycoon. If he had even a hint that these bamboo shoots in the truck were worth their weight in gold, he would never have ventured anywhere near this vicinity. All of this is just a big misunderstanding. The middle-aged man was now imploring for mercy. Su-ming stood to the side, his smile subtle. While the middle-aged man remained oblivious to Su-ming's sale of golden bamboo shoots, his demeanor exuded anything but innocence. He was crude and unreasonable. The two police officers maintained vigilant gazes. The vehicle itself might not have been particularly expensive, but its contents were outrageously valuable. Before long, the distant sound of police sirens grew audible. Shortly afterward, two patrolmen arrived. The presence of their colleague clearly eased the tension, apparent from the relieved expressions of the two original officers. Only after the middle-aged man had been escorted into the police car did they slightly relax. Are you on your way to the bank? One of the patrolmen inquired. This was a conjecture on the part of the patrolman. The sheer value of these goods was hard to dismiss. Yes. Su-ming responded with a faint smile. Would you like us to provide an escort? That won't be necessary. Su-ming's smile held a hint of wryness. These items aren't of considerable worth. You needn't trouble yourselves. The patrolman found himself momentarily at a loss for words. Expressing his gratitude to the patrolman, Su-ming then climbed into the vehicle. Following the navigation instructions, he proceeded towards the bank. Though Su-ming had declined their offer to escort him, two police cars discreetly followed behind. The sight of them made it difficult for Su-ming to turn them down. The patrolmen at the initial intersections were well informed, allowing Su-ming to pass through the signals without waiting. What's happening? What kind of produce is he peddling? The main road had already become congested. A red light that lasted minutes had aggravated the impatience of the drivers. Upon spotting a produce truck navigating the road unimpeded and receiving no resistance, every set of eyes widened. A Porsche owner, who had recently splurged on their purchase, felt a pang of regret. The truck driver's demeanor reeked of dejection. Su-ming, however, was in high spirits. He pressed down on the accelerator and surged forward, aiming directly for the bank. Su-ming parked the vehicle right in front of the bank. You can't park here. The bank's security guard emerged with a stern expression, pushing the entrance door open. Isn't this a parking space? This is our bank's VIP parking zone. Pointing at the sign nearby, the security guard explained, only customers with savings exceeding 10 million are eligible to park here. Su-ming gave a nod. Just drive ahead about 20 meters. There's a public parking space available there. The security guard indicated. Su-ming's smile was tinged with subtle amusement. So, if I were to deposit 10 million yuan now, I'd be exempt from moving my vehicle, right? Chapter 13 The rich man. Do you actually possess that much money? Upon hearing this, the security guard furrowed his brows. I don't have time for games. The security guard's tone turned icy. Move your vehicle to the public parking area. Don't create disturbances in front of the bank. The security guard was clearly disdainful. Judging by his attire, it seemed improbable for him to have 10 million in savings. Seeing a billionaire behind the wheel of a vegetable-selling car was a novelty. Just then, a siren blared. The two patrolling officers tailing Su-ming approached rapidly. One of the patrolmen inquired sternly, "What's the situation?" The security guard was taken aback. The police response was astonishingly quick. The security guard hurriedly explained, "Officers, this parking spot is reserved for VIPs of our bank," yet he insisted on parking here. The other patrol officer questioned coolly, "Why did you prevent this gentleman from entering?" The security guard was surprised. Why were these two patrolmen vouching for this individual? What was happening? The security guard stood stunned and speechless. Look, what's transpiring? Could it be that the security guard is in cahoots with the robbers and the police caught on? Sounds like an excessive dose of TV drama. Overindulgence in TV, perhaps? Meanwhile, the bank's president, who was dealing with business inside, noticed the commotion and rushed out. President Chen spoke anxiously, "Officers, I am the bank's president." What's transpired here? If the security guard had indeed committed a misstep, he had to take responsibility. After all, ascending to the position of bank president required substantial effort. Should he be ensnared due to the security guard, he'd face significant repercussions. Don't fret. The two policemen shifted their gaze towards Suming and stated, "This gentleman intends to vend something here." President Chen was taken aback. Vend something? Wasn't this a vegetable-selling car? This was a bank, not a marketplace. President Chen was utterly perplexed, yet the stern expressions of the two officers remained unchanged. Tentatively, President Chen inquired, "Sir, what exactly do you have in your vehicle?" Suming grinned and replied, "While cleaning my storeroom today, I found some things occupying space in a corner. So, I've brought them here, wondering if you're interested in these items." What astonished President Chen was Suming treating the bank like a garbage disposal site. However, if Suming was indeed here to peddle waste, he shouldn't be under police protection. A thought occurred to Suming and he added, "I made a call to your bank earlier. Do you recall?" President Chen was flabbergasted. So he was the caller. He was the one who wanted to sell commemorative bamboo shoots. Based on President Chen's experience, individuals selling high-priced items usually contacted him privately, and often had a contingent of bodyguards in tow. This was the first instance of someone like Suming, clad in cloth shoes, driving a vegetable vendor's automobile, that President Chen had encountered. Chapter 14 Protection. Being the president of a bank, he had encountered numerous wealthy individuals. Every affluent person had their own distinctive interests and pastimes. Perhaps the wealthy person before him had a penchant for farming. "You're the one selling these bamboo shoots?" President Chen inquired with evident surprise. "Yes, please have a look." Suming responded casually, strolling to the rear door of the car and opening it. President Chen moistened his lips and hurriedly made his way to the back of the vehicle to peer inside. There were not many of these golden bamboo shoots, only 100 existed worldwide. Although not large in size, they possessed an exceptionally high density. Despite their bamboo shoot-like appearance, they were petite. Most significantly, the gold's purity was exceptionally high, rendering these golden bamboo shoots exquisite and exceptionally valuable. Each bamboo shoot boasted its own unique serial number. This was particularly true for the bamboo shoot bearing the number 001. Its worth was outrageously high. As for the seemingly unremarkable bamboo shoot nearest to President Chen, its label bore the number 001. "President Chen, are you interested in purchasing them?" Surprised by President Chen's momentary silence, Suming couldn't help but inquire. "Yes." Fearing that Suming might reconsider, President Chen exclaimed jubilantly, momentarily startling Suming. "My apologies, I got carried away." President Chen, aware of his loss of composure, rubbed his hands sheepishly. He had struck gold this time. These 50 golden bamboo shoots constituted a substantial sum, and there was profit to be made without a doubt. "How do you intend to sell them?" President Chen ventured to ask. Suming hesitated momentarily. "I'll sell them by weight." "Don't your bank's coffers have enough money?" "I can take my business elsewhere." President Chen hastily waved his hand. "We certainly have enough funds." President Chen was on the brink of ecstasy. He had just made a fortune. The value of bamboo shoot number 001 alone far surpassed the worth of the gold itself. This specially numbered bamboo shoot was worth millions. It was worth noting that a 4,000 grams bamboo shoot was valued at only 1.56 million. However, President Chen remained oblivious to Suming's nonchalance. To Suming, this was merely a facet of farming. Suming glanced at the time. "I'll get in the car and catch some sleep then. Notify me when you're finished." President Chen promptly nodded. President Chen concurred while wiping the beads of sweat from his brow. As he watched Suming take the driver's seat and shut his eyes for a nap, he couldn't help but reflect, this was the essence of wealth. The contents in the car were worth hundreds of millions in gold. Yet, Suming remained utterly unfazed. Despite Suming's absence to supervise, President Chen did not dare to act recklessly. But parking Suming's vehicle by the roadside in broad daylight made it inappropriate to tally gold in front of onlookers, right? President Chen pondered for a moment. He had no choice but to make a phone call. Before long, 2 black vehicles approached. Over a dozen fully equipped bank security personnel formed a perimeter. These individuals were bank employees authorized to carry firearms. Additionally, several patrol officers, alerted by the commotion, arrived and encircled the vicinity. Chapter 15. I could be a billionaire. What's going on? Is there an attempt to rob me? You're speaking nonsense. You're so destitute that criminals wouldn't even consider targeting you. Can't you show me some respect? Could you please show me some respect? Even the bank's staff had rarely witnessed such a scene. Even when the armored money truck arrived, it wasn't like this. The pedestrians nearby were even more astonished. What on earth is happening? Isn't that a truck carrying vegetables? Why are there so many security guards surrounding it? Since when did a vegetable truck become so valuable? All eyes were on Su Ming, who was comfortably seated in the driver's seat. He was sleeping soundly. After all, with so many people around to protect him, how could he not get a good night's sleep? Due to the fixed weight of each bamboo shoot and the bank's unique method for verifying their authenticity, they counted, cataloged, packaged, transported, and stored the bamboo shoots. The process was incredibly swift. In under 10 minutes, they completed the task. President Chen's eyes gleamed with excitement. The headquarters had just received the news, and the regional CEO personally called him to heap praise upon him. This time, he would be hailed as the President of the Year. If the regional CEO continued to support him, he could truly thrive. Of course, this was all in the future. For now, his priority was to ingratiate himself with Su Ming, who had brought him this opportunity. Su Ming was an incredibly distinguished VIP. President Chen couldn't help but bow respectfully, holding a bank card with both hands as he cautiously approached the car. He hesitated when he saw Su Ming, who appeared to be resting with his eyes closed. Should he wait a bit longer? Just as President Chen wavered, Su Ming slowly opened his eyes and lowered the car window. President Chen, have you finished the counting? Yes. President Chen hastily affirmed, bowing deeply and saying, your golden bamboo shoes are worth a fortune, totaling 50 in all. Tell me the total. Su Ming said. Okay. President Chen quickly responded, the total amount is 89.2 million. We're willing to round it up to 90 million for you. As he uttered these words, President Chen respectfully placed the bank card before Su Ming. This amounted to a grand total of 90 million yuan. Despite Su Ming's mental preparation, he couldn't help but feel a tad bewildered when confronted with this substantial sum. However, in President Chen's eyes, Su Ming appeared deep in thought with a composed demeanor, possibly indicating his dissatisfaction with the sum. Could it be that he deemed the offer insufficient? Su Ming must have conducted a thorough evaluation before arriving. While the price offered was generous, there remained the possibility that other banks might offer even more. This thought troubled President Chen. Su Ming held significant importance for their bank at this juncture. Moreover, the uniqueness lay in the fact that this wasn't a fixed asset or stock. This was actual gold, liquid cash readily available for withdrawal at any moment. In this instance, Su Ming was presenting President Chen with a significant opportunity. Excluding the batch of 50 exceedingly precious golden bamboo shoots. If this transaction were to go through successfully, Su Ming would emerge as a substantial client for their bank. Contemplating this, President Chen clenched his teeth and promptly offered, Mr. Su, should you find our offer unsatisfactory, I'm willing to further increase the price. In truth, Su Ming was already content with the current offer. He could still nurture this asset upon his return. However, who could ever complain about having an abundance of wealth? If you'd be amenable, let's delve deeper into this. I can promptly provide you with a more agreeable offer. Then the two of you can proceed with your discussions. Su Ming nodded nonchalantly, radiating an air of composure. This only strengthened President Chen's conviction that Su Ming had been dissatisfied with the initial proposal. He was relieved that he had acted swiftly in raising the offer. Otherwise, losing a major client like Su Ming would haunt him for at least 3 months. Following some negotiation, President Chen elevated the price to 120 million. Without further hesitation, Su Ming accepted the bank card. This deal wasn't a loss. Thank you. Su Ming stashed the bank card away with a casual remark. This is the way forward. If you have anything else in your warehouse to sell, don't hesitate to reach out to me. We'll ensure you get a fair price. President Chen hastily extended his business card. The bystanders, upon hearing this, collectively gasped in amazement. So, he had came to sell his merchandise. What was even more astounding was that he had managed to secure 120 million. What kind of items was he peddling? Not even a 10,000-year-old ginseng would fetch such a sum, would it? He's so young, and he's already a billionaire. I just signed a 3 million yuan deal. I was thrilled initially, but now, not so much. The most astonishing part is that he's only selling a portion of it. If he were to bring out all that cash, how substantial would it be? He is incredibly handsome. Isn't he the Prince Charming the first we always dreamed of? Big sister, maybe you should take a look in the mirror. Envy radiated from the onlookers. Su Ming overheard the murmurs from the surrounding crowd and offered a faint smile. I own a downtown farm worth 10 billion. Chapter 16 Word hard to upgrade. I won't trouble you any longer, President Chen. We can continue our conversation later. Following Su Ming's words, he expressed his gratitude to the patrol officers who had been providing him protection from behind. Subsequently, he drove away. President Chen nodded and bid farewell, saying, "Take care." After observing Su Ming's departure, President Chen addressed the security guard with a serious tone, "You're dismissed." The security guard was taken aback. President Chen reprimanded, "How dare you offend our bank's most esteemed customer? Your employment here is no longer necessary." President Chen then turned to the other staff and instructed, "Immediately distribute Mr. Su's photo to all employees. Everyone should commit Mr. Su's face to memory. Whenever Mr. Su visits, everyone must extend a solemn welcome. Anyone who dares to offend Mr. Su will face consequences." Just yesterday morning, Su Ming had been worried about the exorbitant dowry. Yet, within a day, he had become a billionaire. The system truly proved to be extraordinary. However, beyond wealth, Su Ming was more inquisitive about what else could be cultivated on this land. While the bamboo shoots he had planted turned out to be golden bamboo shoots, he was eager to see how potatoes, peanuts, fruits, and other crops would thrive. Thanks to the farm system, any plant Su Ming cultivated would flourish in its ideal environment. Su Ming noted that fertilization and watering didn't seem to be very effective, but this could be seen as the system's way of allowing him to relish the joy of farming. Crop harvest successful. You have gained 50 experience points. Suddenly, a system notification chimed in Su Ming's mind. Su Ming was taken aback and swiftly accessed the control panel. Farmer, Su Ming, level 1, experience point, 50 out of 100 experience point, farm, level 1, whenever he plucked a fruit, he earned a single experience point. A level 1 farm already boasted considerable might. If he persisted in upgrading the farm, what transformations might await it? Contemplating this, Su Ming couldn't contain his excitement. His resolve solidified, he was prepared to toil diligently. He hummed a tune while driving back. In no time, he arrived back at the farm, parked the car, and stepped out. He headed to the bamboo shoot field, tending to the withered bamboo shoots. You may recover 50 withered bamboo shoots. Would you like to reclaim them? Su Ming pondered, reclaim these withered bamboo shoots. Recovery successful. Congratulations, you've gained 10 experience points. The notification's chime brought a faint smile to Su Ming's lips. Harvesting crops bestowed experience points, and reclaiming withered crops did the same. Brimming with vigor, Su Ming rolled up his sleeves and set to work. Initially, Su Ming plowed the soil where he had planted bamboo shoots. Next, he scoured the warehouse for tomato seeds. Tomatoes have been successfully sown. They'll ripen in 12 hours. Su Ming received this notification with equanimity, as he had grown accustomed to such occurrences. Irrigating and fertilizing could expedite crop maturation, enhance crop quality, and boost yields. After nearly 3 hours of relentless effort, he completed the land's planting. Finally, he released a sigh of relief. I haven't worked like this in ages. I'm not as physically fit as I used to be. Easing the ache in his lower back with a gentle rub, Su Ming cleansed his hands and feet before reclining on the chair beside the thatched cottage. He intended to rest briefly before resuming his work. Abruptly, Su Ming's phone rang, and his expression shifted slightly upon seeing the caller ID. It was his parents. Immersed in his tasks throughout the day, Su Ming had forgotten to inform his parents about calling off the engagement. Chapter 17 again. Ming, what's the status of your upcoming nuptials with Su? Is the date finalized? The voice of Su Ming's mother resonated from the other end of the phone line. Mother. Experiencing a moment of hesitation, Su Ming felt compelled to be honest. Wang Zhu and I have parted ways. Excuse me? A sense of urgency filled Li Sumai's tone. Why wasn't such a critical decision shared with us? The unborn child in Zhu's womb is blameless. If it's a matter of finances, your father and I can secure additional funds. Whatever it takes, we shouldn't postpone your wedding. The words from Li Sumai touched Su Ming deeply, almost bringing him to tears. His parents were simple rural folk. They had sacrificed much on his behalf. Mother. Su Ming clarified, it's not as you're imagining. I'd unquestionably assume responsibility if the child were mine, but the baby Wang Zhu is carrying isn't mine. I beg your pardon? Li Sumai was left bewildered. Mother, let's put this matter to rest. Attempting to uplift her spirits, Su Ming continued, on a brighter note, I've secured a promising job. My monthly earnings exceed 20,000 yuan. Is that so? A note of astonishment colored Li Sumai's voice. Be prudent with your earnings. Put some aside for your eventual wedding. Understood, Mother. A smile crossed Su Ming's face. Very well, I'll let you get back to your responsibilities now. With those words, Li Sumai ended the call. Holding the phone, Su Ming felt a swirl of emotions. He exhaled deeply and tucked the phone away. Should he reveal to his parents his ownership of a city land parcel valued at 10 billion, he feared they might not grasp the enormity of it. Patience was the better course of action. In due time, he would introduce them to the luxuries of city life. Resolving this, Su Ming ceased to dwell on the matter. Su Ming reclined comfortably, letting the sun warm his face while the gentle breeze caressed him. Just as he teetered on the edge of sleep, A jarring bell sound jolted him awake. He sluggishly opened his eyes and, upon seeing the caller ID, his brow creased. It was the landlord ringing him. Glancing at the calendar, Su-ming had an epiphany. Ah, that explained it. Today was rent day. The place he rented was located in an older suburban area. Lacking modern amenities like geothermal heating or air conditioning, it was bone-chilling in winter and oppressively hot in summer. The setting might be somewhat austere, but the price was right. The landlord, however, was notorious for his short fuse and stinginess. He perceived Su-ming as an easy target, constantly pushing him around. He even accused Su-ming of damaging the house's floor, walls, and the old refrigerator. Truth be told, the place was already in a state of disrepair. The fridge was nearly as old as Su-ming, so it breaking down was hardly a surprise. It was the affordability and the convenient bus route nearby that made Su-ming opt for this place. In the past, Su-ming would have politely engaged with the landlord over the phone. But times had changed. Where are you now? The moment Su-ming answered the call, a shrill voice snapped, Are you planning on skipping out on rent? Listen up, you've got 30 minutes. If you're not back by then, find somewhere else to stay, even if it's the streets. Also, just so you know, I'm raising the rent. It's $1,000 a month from now. With that, the call ended. Not this again. Su-ming couldn't help but smirk. Periodically, the landlord would hike the rent, and previously Su-ming would bring over fruits and gifts, imploring him for leniency. He wasn't going to indulge him anymore. Su-ming powered down his phone, reclined once more, and in no time, he was fast asleep. Chapter 18 Ordinary Cars. After completing his farm chores, Su-ming fell into a deep sleep. He rested for 3 hours, then awoke with a contented expression. Waking up, he felt rejuvenated and energetic. Checking his phone, he noticed over 50 unanswered calls. He had over 30 unread messages. The landlord was quite insistent. Su-ming guessed the landlord was now irate. This thought secretly amused him. Regardless, his house contained nothing of significance. Just some bedding, clothing, and a second-hand laptop, which was the most valuable item. It held no crucial documents. Su-ming leisurely got ready and visited the field to inspect his tomato plants. The vines had indeed sprouted. Adjacent to them was a stick provided by the system that supported and tied the vines. After all, mature tomatoes became quite weighty. A sudden rumble from his stomach took Su-ming by surprise. He realized he hadn't eaten the entire day. He was so engrossed in his farming tasks that meals slipped his mind. Su-ming headed to the nearby food city and got a bowl of noodles. Is that not Mr. Su? While eating, a familiar, astonished voice echoed. Su-ming, caught off guard, glanced sideways. To his surprise, it was his old friend, President Chen. What a pleasant surprise, President Chen. Su-ming greeted with a smile. President Chen carefully approached and took a seat facing Su-ming. An inner reflection reminded him how even a magnate could appear so humble and plain. What defines a billionaire? After all, their daily necessities and lifestyles often mirror those of the average individual. Who could distinguish, on mere appearance, the magnate capable of withdrawing vast sums at a moment's notice from an ordinary passerby? Had he possessed the funds, he'd have flaunted it by now. Even though he was nearing 50, he couldn't match the energy of someone in their 20s. We appreciate the confidence you've placed in our bank. President Chen moistened his parched lips. Today, our bank is holding a raffle for all our customers, and you've just won our top prize. Su-ming was momentarily taken aback. Could such good fortune be real? However, he quickly deduced it wasn't an actual raffle. It was clear President Chen wanted to gift him something, yet struggled to find an appropriate pretext. I never realized I was this fortunate. What's the grand prize, President Chen? As Su-ming took a noodle bite, he probed further. A car. Without delay, President Chen produced a key from his pocket, placing it before Su-ming. Mr. Su, please don't take offense. This car is modestly priced at 500,000 yuan. Please accept it. Su-ming noticed the BMW emblem. It seemed quite decent. He pondered whether he should purchase a vehicle for himself since driving his vegetable-selling car around was becoming a tad embarrassing. Serendipitously, President Chen presented him with a BMW. Indeed, even if the car wasn't exceptionally pricey, he was in need of one at that moment. I'm actually in the market for a car. My gratitude, President Chen. Su-ming pocketed the car keys. Observing Su-ming's acceptance, President Chen exhaled a sigh of relief, as though a weight had been lifted. Mr. Su, enclosed is your car's purchase contract and insurance details. Rest assured, our bank will cover your car's maintenance insurance. I appreciate your efforts, President Chen. Su-ming expressed his thanks unreservedly. He understood that President Chen's gesture wasn't without motive. Being a major client of the bank meant that with increased deposits and investments, President Chen's promotion was on the horizon. This was merely President Chen strategizing for his future. Mr. Su, I won't intrude further. We'll have the car delivered and parked below soon, with license plates already arranged for you. Alright. Su-ming nodded. Chapter 19. I'll pay for it. Su-ming ate to his satisfaction and settled the bill. Exiting the building, he noticed a gleaming new BMW parked just outside the mall. An employee from the bank stood beside it. Spotting Su-ming, he quickly approached, saying, Mr. Su, this car is yours. Thank you. Su-ming expressed his gratitude, placing a reassuring hand on the bank employee's shoulder. Inform your president that I plan to visit your bank soon. The bank employee's face lit up with delight. Hadn't this been the moment he'd been hoping for? Given Mr. Su's statement, it was a done deal. Thank you, Mr. Su. With a nod and a grin, Su-ming slid into the driver's seat. During his college days, Su-ming occasionally drove. Prior to that, he attended several driving courses, mastering the art of handling a sports car. He maneuvered through the city's downtown, eventually making his way towards the outskirts. The dense landscape of skyscrapers and malls began to thin out. Although familiar with this route, he had previously only traveled it by bus. Now driving, the journey felt distinctively different. Navigating through an intersection, he took a turn and soon entered his rented residential area. The complex lacked parking, so he found a spot nearby. He then headed towards the building's entrance. A musty, damp aroma filled the stairwell, its walls plastered with various small ads. Su-ming confidently climbed to the third floor. He rested his hand on the aged wooden door, giving it a soft push. A grating noise reverberated down the hallway. Yet, just as the door opened slightly, it was abruptly yanked from the other side. The fragile door quivered, seeming as if it might disintegrate. The stout landlady, not even 1.5 meters tall but weighing considerably, glared at Su-ming. Where were you? Why have you returned so late? Her shrill voice made Su-ming wince. I haven't done anything wrong. I just stepped out for a bite. With a subtle smile, Su-ming gently opened the door. You. The landlord, fuming with anger, pointed directly at Su-ming, her hand quivering. Listen, this is a brand new sofa I purchased. It cost me tens of thousands of yuan. You've damaged it severely. You're settling the bill today. I'll cover the costs. Su-ming responded with a smile. How much do I owe? What? The landlord was caught off guard. Her previous perception of Su-ming was of someone who always sought her approval, acting overly compliant whenever he encountered her. What brought about this sudden change in him? To her knowledge, Su-ming was broke. He had exhausted all his savings on gifts and renovations for his prospective mother-in-law. That's the reason she took advantage of Su-ming. Yet, his demeanor today was unexpectedly different. Alright, it's 30,000 yuan. The landlord declared, hands akimbo, her expression stern. Absolutely, I'll handle it. With a faint smile, Su-ming accessed his phone and promptly transferred 30,500 yuan into the landlord's account. The additional 500 yuan was for the rent. As the landlord's phone buzzed, she checked to find an unexpected sum exceeding 30,000 yuan. She was taken aback. What just happened? Wasn't Su-ming the one she regularly berated, expecting him to return later with an apologetic offering of fruits and gifts? That way, she could save some money on produce. However, things didn't unfold as anticipated this time. Chapter 20. Stealing. Su-ming paid no attention to the landlord. After all, with his newfound billionaire status, he owned land valued at 10 billion. Frankly, such individuals were no longer in a position to bother him. Retreating to his bedroom, Su-ming retrieved his graduation and degree certificates from beneath a box. He fetched a snakeskin bag from under his bed and packed it with essentials. Glancing around, he realized there was nothing else he wanted to bring. I've decided not to continue renting here. I'll settle any outstanding payments. Farewell. With a subtle smile, Su-ming departed downstairs, clutching the snakeskin bag. The landlord was taken aback by Su-ming's behavior. She epitomized someone who preyed on the vulnerable but cowered before the dominant. While her husband was a forceful man, he was notorious for his extramarital escapades. Despite her awareness of his infidelity, she always welcomed him home with a cheerful demeanor. That very morning, her husband withdrew a considerable sum for his leisure pursuits. Though she understood his intentions, she felt powerless to intervene. Feeling aggrieved, the landlord had intended to find a reason to berate Su-ming during rent collection that day. She had hoped Su-ming would reimburse her for a household item, but he declined. Over the past 3 years, Su-ming was the sole occupant, leading the landlord to believe he must be the one responsible for any damages. The landlord held a housing contract with specific stipulations outlined. Once she received the payment from Su-ming, she intended to evict him. Her plan was to use Su-ming's payment for property renovations and upgrading to better second-hand appliances. This would allow her to hike up the rent. However, Su-ming's actions took her completely by surprise. Unlike previous occasions, after her call, Su-ming didn't hurry back. He kept her waiting for over 4 hours. Upon his return, he seemed indifferent to her. Most notably, when she demanded compensation, Su-ming promptly transferred the funds to her. Despite receiving the money, she felt somewhat disgruntled. Fuming, the landlord abruptly shut the door and stormed downstairs. She was determined to confront and rebuke Su-ming. Reaching the ground floor, she spotted Su-ming near a luxury vehicle, holding a snakeskin bag and conversing with 2 patrol officers. Laughing boisterously, the landlord remarked, "Has Su-ming been caught pilfering from the police? No wonder he was keen on moving out. Guess he had prison in mind." With a sneer, the landlord watched the scene, her gaze filled with contempt for Su-ming. That luxurious vehicle was easily worth several million yuan. It was audacious of Su-ming to even think of stealing such a pricey car, likely landing him a lengthy jail term. She pondered whose car it might be. In this old neighborhood, she was familiar with most, but was certain few could afford such a lavish vehicle. Perhaps someone had just parked it there temporarily. Regardless, she believed Su-ming was out of luck. Of all the vehicles available, he chose a luxury one worth over 3 million yuan, and now he was caught by the police. Chapter 21. The landlord was dumbfounded. However, in the next moment, the landlord was left speechless. Su-ming, to everyone's surprise, greeted and exchanged handshakes with one of the patrol officers. They welcomed him with warmth. It was these patrol officers who had accompanied Su-ming to the bank earlier in the day. Upon descending the stairs, Su-ming encountered the 2 officers patrolling the vicinity. This area was, after all, suburban, notorious for having a relatively elevated crime rate in the entire city. Observing Su-ming, the 2 patrol officers exited their vehicle to greet him. They had become somewhat familiar with each other. But no sooner had they exchanged pleasantries, than the landlord's laugh was heard, mocking him from a side. "Mr. Su, is this the landlord you were referring to?" inquired one of the patrol officers. "Indeed." Su-ming affirmed with a nod. The officers exchanged glances before approaching the landlord with stern faces, revealing their badges. "Greetings, ma'am. We've received a complaint from Mr. Su accusing you of extortion." The landlord was taken aback. She had anticipated witnessing the arrest of Su-ming. How had the tables turned so abruptly? "Is there some mistake?" she uttered, her voice laced with anxiety. "Rest assured, we uphold justice, no wrongdoer will escape, and no innocent will suffer. We request your cooperation during our investigation." Subsequently, one officer handcuffed the landlord. The chilling metal of the handcuffs caused a shiver to run through her, and she erupted into desperate resistance. "Why am I being detained?" she protested vehemently. An officer firmly subdued her to the ground. "Theft?" Another remarked scornfully, "Mr. Su possesses billions. The BMW is his property." The landlord was flabbergasted. Could this $3 million BMW possibly belong to Su-ming? Impossible. Su-ming had been her tenant for 3 full years. She believed she knew all there was to know about him. He hailed from a rural area with parents leading simple, agricultural lives. Formerly, Su-ming held a regular position in a company before losing his job. Now he was unemployed. How could he possibly own such a luxury vehicle? How could he be affluent? "I appreciate your diligence." Su-ming smiled warmly at the officers. "No issue. Maintaining societal harmony and securing public life and property is our responsibility." An officer suggested, "Mr. Su, please resume your activities. We'll inform you post our inquiry here." "Understood." Su-ming assented, boarded his BMW, and left. The officers escorted the landlord to the 3rd floor, and after examining the house's interior, one remarked, "Appliances here barely worth 1,000, and you demand 30,000? You're under suspicion of fraud. Await your court summons." Chapter 22. Could it be the gold again? Leaving the hapless landlord behind, Su-ming drove as fast as he could to the city center. He planned to continue farming. Using the system, Su-ming discovered an undeniable fascination with farming. The vast variety of crops that could be cultivated held his attention. Uncertainty surrounded the outcome of his plantings. Regardless, even if they all turned into gold, considerable wealth would flow in. Nevertheless, Su-ming held firm in his belief that the system wouldn't be as straightforward and mundane. Each endeavor promised a distinct surprise. As Su-ming returned, the sky had darkened slightly. Yet, given the city's central location, towering edifices illuminated the area, and streetlights lined the roads. It didn't appear dark in the least. He cleared a small plot of land, and the system automatically recycled the weeds. Su-ming retrieved some cucumber seeds from the warehouse. The process had become second nature to him. Su-ming observed that during planting, the system would promptly alert him. If the plant spacing was too cramped, The system signaled planting failure. This was sensible, after all, every plant required adequate space to thrive. Ding. Cucumber successfully planted. Harvest time, 18 hours. Following that, he applied fertilizer and water with practiced precision. Surveying the now tidy land, Su-Ming felt content and headed to the faucet to wash up. Seated in a rocking chair, he observed the bustling nighttime city. Nevertheless, Su-Ming wrestled with a quandary. Given his newfound billionaire status, residing in the old houses was undoubtedly no longer an option. Should he buy a villa? However, Su-Ming quickly dismissed the idea. It wasn't that he lacked the funds, rather, there was simply no necessity for it. At the moment, his entire focus remained on those 2 acres. Nevertheless, adjacent to the 2 acres of land, the system had conjured a quaint thatched cottage into existence. It seemed prudent to capitalize on this piece of land by constructing a modest dwelling. As long as the amenities were in place, it would suffice. This arrangement would significantly enhance his daily life. Following a meal at the nearby mall, Su-Ming promptly headed to Appliances City and acquired a high-end computer. After all, it was a system-generated thatched cottage, complete with readily available internet access boasting exceptional speed. Su-Ming commenced gaming. After a full day of work, Su-Ming felt somewhat fatigued and soon drifted into slumber. When he awoke the next morning, it was nearly noon. Armed with his previous experience, Su-Ming took his time waking up and proceeded to inspect what was sprouting from the earth. Due to the system's automatic concealment, Su-Ming could only discern the ordinary rice seedlings from a distance. Being in a temperate southern city, the climate was ideal for rice cultivation. Growing rice wouldn't draw any undue attention. Even if others ventured onto the land, they wouldn't be able to disturb the crops Su-Ming had planted. This was a privilege granted to Su-Ming and a safeguard provided by the system for his land. Upon stepping onto the soil, Su-Ming's first order of business was to check the cucumbers he had planted the previous day. The cucumber vines had already flourished, winding their way up the system's automatically generated shelves, and most were now in full bloom. Su-Ming nodded in contentment, then turned his attention to the tomatoes, noting that they were already ripe. The tomato was shining golden under the sun. Su-Ming frowned slightly. Was it gold again? Su-Ming sighed. Chapter 23 Isn't gold, it was gold again. Su-Ming shifted uneasily and gave a resigned shake of his head. There are no surprises up my sleeve. He crouched, his fingers caressing a mature tomato before plucking it. A look of bewilderment crossed Su-Ming's face as he grasped the luminous tomato. It didn't feel right in weight. The golden hue suggested heaviness. Yet, it felt oddly light. It felt as if he could easily squish it. With a puzzled look, Su-Ming tested its resilience. To his astonishment, the tomato crumbled in his grip. Could it really be that fragile? Amazement was evident as his jaw dropped. Among the debris, something caught his eye. He leaned in for a better look. Was it a timepiece? Specifically, one from Vacherin Constantin. He quickly consulted the web on his phone. It was a rare edition, carrying a significant price tag. Clearly, its value surpassed mere gold. A sense of astonishment flashed in Su-Ming's eyes. But given his recent adventures, he felt relatively composed. Interestingly, each shrub bore just a single tomato. On counting, there were 20 plants, yielding 20 golden fruits. He proceeded to the next one, gently pressing it. Inside was another timepiece, sporty and not at all modest in value. With anticipation, he opened the remaining golden orbs. A piece of jade. A decorative wrist accessory. The newest smartphone model. A high-end DSLR camera. Premium mist green tea. All 20 were meticulously opened. Surveying the spread on the ground, a chuckle escaped Su-Ming's lips. An array of lavish jewels, gadgets, and other valuables lay before him. Even some tea varieties not readily available in stores. Storing these might necessitate a larger space, he mused. He inspected the phone. Upon powering it on, everything functioned seamlessly, proving its authenticity. Testing the camera, he was impressed with the clarity. All the day's finds were safely tucked into a bag he held. His emotions were a mix of amusement and disbelief. Discovering such treasures in a field seemed unfathomable. Who could possibly fathom such a tale? Yet, his inquisitive nature lingered. The flourishing cucumber plant piqued his interest about its yield. He hoped it wasn't another tech gadget. Or he might just start an electronics shop next door. Back in his humble abode, he nonchalantly tossed the bag into a corner box. Such nonchalance might seem absurd. Out in the world, such a stash could spark mayhem. Even the least pricey item, the sports watch, was worth a tidy sum. As for the priciest item, the imperial green jade, its value was immeasurable. But to Su-Ming, these were mere trinkets. For now, they'd reside in that box. Soon, a larger storage solution would be essential. All in all, it was a rewarding day. especially considering average annual earnings. Harvest successful. 20 experience points awarded. Energized, Su-Ming's eyes sparkled. He promptly set about clearing away the leftover plant debris. Cleanup complete. 10 experience points earned. Eagerly, Su-Ming accessed the digital interface. Farmer, Su-Ming, level 1, experience point, 90 out of 100 experience point, farm, level 1, Su-Ming was about to level up. Chapter 24. A pay raise. A hearty laugh escaped Su-Ming's lips uncontrollably. The system had already exhibited considerable power before its level up. Contemplating its enhanced might was exhilarating. His anticipation was palpable. With his thought filling him with vigor, Su-Ming descended to tend to the grass. Just then, an Audi approached from a short distance away. Seated in the back of the car, President Chen had his eyes shut, seeking a moment's reprieve. Out of nowhere, the vehicle jerked, causing President Chen to bump his forehead. He winced in discomfort, his face twisted in pain. "Mr. President, I apologize." The driver swiftly turned around, offering an apologetic explanation. "There's an unexpected pothole on this road." "You." President Chen began to speak, poised to reprimand the driver, but then his gaze was suddenly arrested by a figure. Why did this person look so familiar? President Chen squinted to get a better look. Wasn't that his prominent client, Su-Ming? Was Su-Ming really tending to crops? Indeed, he was cultivating crops. Right here in the city center. This vacant plot was worth a staggering 10 billion. President Chen stood there, mouth agape, and eyes wide, questioning the very essence of his existence. He had exhausted all his attempts to speculate on Su-Ming's background. He had contemplated whether Su-Ming might be the scion of a financial magnate. Or perhaps he was the heir to a real estate tycoon. Even the possibility of Su-Ming hailing from a prominent dynasty had crossed his mind. But now he recognized the limitations of his narrow thinking. He was just an ordinary individual. How could someone ordinary ever fathom Su-Ming's intentions? In reality, Su-Ming was farming right in the heart of the city, on a plot of land valued at an astonishing 10 billion. Well done. President Chen's sudden outburst upon seeing the driver took the driver by surprise. What was happening? Had the president lost his senses for a moment? President. The driver blinked and stammered. You've done an excellent job. I am highly pleased. You'll receive a raise when we return. President Chen promptly disembarked from the car and added, You can drive the car back, I'll make my own way. The driver felt bewildered. He couldn't grasp the situation, but he obediently drove off. President Chen adjusted his tie, cleared his throat, and then strolled into the open area, wearing a contented smile. Who's there? Su-Ming heard footsteps behind him, momentarily taken aback, and turned to encounter a cheerful, familiar face. Ah, it's you, President Chen. President Chen scratched his head and inquired, Mr. Su, what are you up to? Su-Ming responded, farming. President Chen quickly nodded. It was evident to him that Su-Ming was indeed tending to his farm, which occupied land worth 10 billion. However, a sense of intrigue overcame him. Outside the city lay vast expanses of land suitable for farming, yet Su-Ming was insistent on cultivating crops in the city center. He voiced his bafflement, remarking that he couldn't comprehend the ways of the affluent. Never before had he witnessed anyone tilling soil in the heart of the city. Mr. Su, does this land belong to you? President Chen blinked, swallowed nervously, and inquired about his most pressing question. Su-Ming nodded, replying, Yes, it belongs to me. Do you have any concerns? President Chen promptly shook his head. Having made up his mind, President Chen scanned his surroundings. President Chen possessed shrewdness, a quality that had propelled him from an ordinary employer to the bank's president. He blinked again and surveyed the area. President Chen's intelligence shone through, otherwise, he wouldn't have risen to the position of bank president. Blinking once more, President Chen queried, Are you eating? Su-Ming nodded and confirmed, Yes. Let me help you. President Chen promptly shed his expensive suit, tossing it aside. He rolled up his sleeves, removed his shoes, and grasped the hoe that Su-Ming had been using. Chapter 25. I have a presumptuous request. You're coming? Su-Ming was stunned for a while. Mr. Su, I was also a farmer. When I was young, I often did farm work. My parents always told me that a person had to be like rice, firmly rooted in the ground in order to produce fruitful results. My parents are gone, but their words are still echoing in my ears. As President Chen said this, he even wiped away his tears. Thank you for giving me such a chance, so that I can reminisce about the days when I worked with my parents. President Chen was indeed from the countryside. His parents were also farmers. President Chen had put in a lot of effort to become the president of a bank from a rural child. He became the pride of his parents. He now had an annual income of 1 million yuan, a car, and a house. President Chen had always thought that he was very successful. At the very least, He could say goodbye to farming. But who would have thought that today, something that refreshed his worldview would happen? Because he realized that farming was not that simple. It mainly depended on where you were farming. Farming in the countryside was indeed an extremely hard job. But if you were to farm on a piece of land worth 10 billion in the city center, that would be different. Even if President Chen was the regional general manager and had the right to allocate billions of yuan, he had never thought of taking down this piece of land. Because he couldn't afford it. But Su Ming actually used such a piece of land to farm. President Chen's actions stunned Su Ming. His performance was flawless. This isn't good. Su Ming said. No. President Chen hurriedly shook his head like a rattle drum. That's good. Su Ming was a real big boss. Su Ming's value was definitely not limited to this piece of land. What did it mean for him to farm on such a piece of land worth 10 billion? It meant Su Ming didn't put this piece of land in his eyes at all. He was very low-key. I have a presumptuous request, and I hope you can agree to it. President Chen blinked and said sincerely. What presumptuous request? Su Ming was stunned for a moment. What did President Chen want? President Chen said hurriedly, a manager of our bank consulted 2 migrant workers who came to save money a while ago. When we found out, we immediately fired him and informed the entire industry. Finally we thought about why this was happening. Because the staff of the bank worked in air-conditioned rooms all day and had long since forgotten the hardships of the peasants. So recently, we are preparing to hold an event to let all the employees of the bank work on the farm so that they can experience the hardships of farmers. But you know that they are very busy, and there is no suitable place for them. I didn't expect you to have 2 acres of land in the city center. There are a lot of weeds in the land. The employees of the bank can weed, so it's not easy to experience life. Don't worry, I will compensate you for all the inconveniences and interruptions in your life. What do you think? Chapter 26 Ingratiating. That's not good. Su Ming glanced around. In reality, this plot isn't that vast. I can manage it myself. It seemed to Su Ming that President Chen might have initiated this event just to appease him. Surely, he had the stature of a bank president. No. President Chen quickly gestured with his hand, imploring, let us have this opportunity. Unnoticed, Su Ming gave him an appreciative nod. It was evident that President Chen wanted to curry favor with Su Ming, yet he made it seem as if he was the one seeking assistance. Would this disrupt the bank employees' tasks? Su Ming pondered, stroking his chin. It's of no concern. President Chen responded promptly. His genuineness was one of the reasons he was elected bank president. Admiration for him welled up in Su Ming's heart. 2 years post-graduation, he was just a minor staff member in a regular firm. Lately, he even lost that job. Were it not for the system, the exorbitant cost of engagement gifts would have weighed him down. If he possessed even a fraction of President Chen's capability, he could have risen to at least a deputy role in his former firm. Very well. Su Ming gave a nod of approval. President Chen's earnestness was so compelling that Su Ming couldn't turn him down. President Chen was elated by Su Ming's consent. Without hesitation, he dialed a number, instructing, summon every staff member to the vacant area next to Guoxing building immediately. This long-postponed event is finally starting. They'll grasp the common man's plight. The person on the line was the bank's vice president. He was left bewildered by the call. Which event was this? He had no inkling. President Chen? The vice president inquired tentatively after a pause. Be there in 30 minutes. President Chen concluded the call briskly. The vice president, taken aback, pondered over the directive. What did President Chen have in mind? Even amidst his uncertainty, he knew he had to act swiftly. He swiftly mobilized all staff and security personnel, leading them to the open area adjacent to the Guoxing building. Sir, where are we headed? What's the situation? What's the matter? Questions buzzed amongst the employees. Just follow along. President Chen has an experiential event lined up to understand the struggles of ordinary folk. The vice president was as clueless as them. I wasn't informed of such an event. Indeed. It was expected for the regular staff to be unaware, but it was surprising that even the management was in the dark. What was President Chen's objective? Chapter 27 Flattery. Confused, the staff quickly arrived. Upon exiting the car, they realized they had reached the city center. Even if they were going to experience the rigors of farming, they expected to be headed to the countryside. President Chen approached and greeted them, saying, "You've all made it." The employees noticed that President Chen's expensive suit and leather shoes were carelessly discarded on the ground. He had rolled up his pants and ventured barefoot into the mud. His shirt was crumpled, and even his face bore traces of dirt. The employees were taken aback. Today, we're here to enhance our industry's service quality and show appreciation for the toil of farmers. We're hosting an event today. It's a great opportunity. If you perform well, there might be promotions and raises for you. President Chen explained, "Your task for today is to clear out all the weeds from this land." President Chen stood there, cheering on the employees. Upon hearing President Chen's words, the employees suddenly noticed an empty space behind them. The empty area was overrun with weeds, but there was someone amidst them. That person was Mr. Su, who had visited the bank to deposit a large sum yesterday. It all became clear in an instant. The president was truly remarkable. This individual with hundreds of millions in cash was undeniably a VIP of their bank, deserving of their president's warm reception. Nevertheless, that was it. After all, their bank wasn't in need of funds. While 100 million yuan was a substantial sum, President Chen had no need to curry favor. However, the situation took a different turn when this individual came to possess a piece of land in the city center valued at 10 billion yuan. President Chen is truly remarkable. No wonder President Chen rose to the position of president. I've toiled for over a decade, and I'm merely a department head. That's the distinction between us. We should take President Chen as our role model. Actually, we should focus on Mr. Su tending to this 10 billion yuan land himself. I'd be overjoyed if I owned land in the city center. Stop daydreaming. Let's get to work. After setting their objective, the bank employees began to motivate themselves to start working. They shed their expensive suits worth thousands of dollars and their nearly $10,000 smartphones onto the ground, and began pulling up the grass. They aspired to emulate President Chen. They aimed to get closer to President Chen. By diligently uprooting the grass, they hoped to bring a smile to Mr. Su's face. If Mr. Su was pleased, it would please President Chen as well. If President Chen was content, it could lead to salary increases for them. Su Ming stood there, smiling, and said, "I appreciate your hard work, everyone. We haven't worked hard enough. Thank you, Mr. Su, for granting us this opportunity to learn. Mr. Su, you're too modest. We're not helping you, you're helping us." The employees continued their discussions. In the heart of the city, a group of well-paid and well-benefited bank employees was bent over, perspiring profusely as they plucked weeds. This was a beautiful scene. Chapter 28. I will give you an ass card. While it appeared that their president reaped the most benefits, they all understood one thing very clearly. Even if it were solely to ensure Mr. Su remembered their faces, that would still hold considerable advantage for them. Should Su Ming decide to engage in banking transactions with them, they stood to earn substantial commissions. The male employees capitalized on their strengths, putting in tremendous effort. The female employees couldn't help gravitating towards Su Ming. If Su Ming took an interest in them, even becoming his former girlfriends would secure their financial well-being for life. Although they had encountered numerous affluent clients, none had matched Su Ming's wealth. Team, give it your all, but avoid damaging the already grown crops. Leading the charge, President Chen issued instructions. As the saying goes, strength lies in numbers. Furthermore, the land they were tending was worth 10 billion. Tending to grass on such valuable land held a unique allure. They even contemplated bringing some of this grass home as a keepsake. They completed their tasks in under 3 hours. Not a single weed remained on the entire farm. Though exhaustion weighed on the employees, they were all elated. They didn't feel tired at all. When they worked on the construction site and earned 50 yuan a day, fatigue often set in. However, when they raked in 5,000 yuan, 50,000 yuan, or even 500,000 yuan a day, their excitement knew no bounds. It was almost as if they had been injected with boundless energy, driven by the promise of substantial rewards. Sufficient incentives had the power to banish fatigue from their minds. Most importantly, what did it signify for Su Ming to have the privilege of cultivating land valued at 10 billion? It meant that he was utterly unperturbed. It meant that his true worth very likely exceeded 10 billion. I sincerely appreciate all your efforts. Thank you all so much. Su Ming expressed his gratitude with a smile. It's what we should do. President Chen stepped forward, rubbing his hands together. Through this work, we've gained a profound understanding of the labor of workers and farmers. We'll certainly enhance our support for the working class. This experience has been highly enlightening for us. Su Ming couldn't help but twitch the corner of his eye upon hearing this. With a smile, President Chen remarked, "We sincerely apologize for occupying your time and land today." President Chen subtly gestured, prompting his vice president to step forward with a gift box they had prepared. He presented it to Su Ming. "It's just a small token, please accept it. We understand that it might not be significant in light of your substantial worth, but we hope you won't be offended." President Chen gazed at Su Ming earnestly. President Chen's performance was truly convincing. Initially, it was President Chen and his team who had arrived to assist Su Ming with removing the weeds. Yet, through a clever shift of perspective, it appeared as though President Chen and his group had occupied Su Ming's time and resources, and Su Ming had assisted them. The employees toiled, their backs aching, and those unaccustomed to farming sparred blistered hands. Ultimately, it was President Chen who reaped significant benefits. It dawned on Suming that identical tasks could yield different outcomes in the hands of different individuals. Some people devoted their lives to pleasing others, yet remained underappreciated. In contrast, President Chen excelled at winning people over. Chapter 29. It was my sincerity above all. President Chen had valid reasons. Our bank intends to host an event, but we are lacking a suitable venue. Consequently, we feel indebted to you. Thus, we'd like to express our gratitude. Please, do not decline. Suming couldn't find any objections. There's really no need for that. Suming blinked in response. To be frank, accepting it would weigh heavily on his conscience. Truth be told, he might not even have much interest in the offering. What do you mean? Suming's words left President Chen startled, his face reflecting a mix of confusion and concern. He turned to the vice president, appearing helpless, before returning his gaze to Suming. I understand that you might not find this sufficient. Why don't I arrange for more? Suming wanted to give him a hearty thumbs up at that moment. Refusing would give President Chen the impression that he disliked the gift. Reluctantly, Suming accepted the item in hand. All right, I'll accept it, then. Suming now grasped why some people struggled to decline gifts from others. It was often because the gift giver was overly persuasive. Thank you, Mr. Su. President Chen displayed an expression of surprise. Suming couldn't help but twitch the corner of his eye once more. In most cases, others were compelled to offer gifts, but this time, Suming willingly received them. President Chen, I appreciate your kind gesture. Perhaps I'll have some business to attend to in the near future. At that time, I may need your assistance. Suming gently patted President Chen on the shoulder. No problem, we'd be more than happy to assist. President Chen beamed with delight upon hearing this. His objective had been attained. Wasn't this precisely what he had desired? President Chen had underestimated his own capabilities. Suming would forever remember this act of kindness. President Chen's actions had genuinely surprised Suming. Then we shall take our leave now. Mr. Su, we won't trouble you any further, President Chen declared. With that, President Chen gestured, and all the employees returned to their cars. This was his modus operandi, he knew when to draw the line. They had already completed the task of clearing the weeds, achieving their objective. There was no reason for them to linger any longer. Even if he felt reluctant to depart, he had to make a resolute exit. After all, it had only been their second encounter. He still had ample opportunities to build a rapport with Suming in the future. After some time, Suming found himself alone at the scene. Smiling, Suming shook his head and utilized the system to gather the cleared weeds. In truth, Suming didn't harbor any ill feelings toward President Chen's actions. Perhaps he could plant some valuable herbs in the ground. In the future, he might need to rely on them when selling such items. Suming settled into the adjacent recliner, opening the box to inspect its contents. Inside lay a ginseng root. While it didn't weigh 7 taels, it was still a substantial 6 taels. Its value was considerable. If he were to auction this ginseng, it would undoubtedly incite a fierce bidding war. However, Suming remained tranquil, wearing a calm smile. Rising from his seat, he opened the box and planted the ginseng. President Chen and his team journeyed back, contented. Chapter 30. The cucumber was ripe. President Chen once gifted Suming a car. The primary motive was Suming being a significant client of theirs. They had the leverage to utilize Suming's 100 million for diverse investments, and the returns they'd reap would be much more than the car's worth. However, they couldn't offer him anything pricier. Yet, when President Chen learned of Suming's land valued at 10 billion, that explained his actions this afternoon. It's highly probable that this is just the beginning. Suming surveyed the cleared area and softly applauded. All the weeds were cleared away, and his next task was to prepare the soil. Suming headed to the straw hut, bringing out a plow to till the land. Observing the cleared space, Suming pondered. What crop should he choose next? Previously, he had sowed 3 types of seeds, and 2 had yielded produce. He had a pumpkin and most recently, a golden melon. He also had a tomato plant, which ultimately gave him a golden egg filled with electronic goods and precious jade jewelry. The cucumber was nearing maturity. Truthfully, Suming wasn't lacking in funds anymore. Apart from the 100 million in his account, the items from the damaged box alone could fetch a handsome sum. What intrigued Suming the most was uncovering further treasures this land might offer. He was true to his word. Eagerly, Suming went over and sifted through the seed packets. He decided on planting potatoes this round. Potatoes are a staple crop, in demand throughout the year. While at home, Suming frequently assisted his parents in cultivating potatoes. Consequently, he was well acquainted with the nuances of potato cultivation. He began by adding some fertilizer, subsequently layering it with soil. He then sliced the potatoes, ensuring the sprouts remained embedded in the soil. Next, He blanketed the potatoes with additional soil. The entire potato planting operation was straightforward, devoid of any intricate technique. Yet, the vast expanse of 2 acres presented a challenge. The quantity of potato seeds he had was insufficient. Pondering over the vacant space, Suming realized he might have to diversify his crops. Maybe cabbage, chili peppers, or even eggplants. He believed vegetable cultivation was a breeze. In a pinch, he even considered planting an apple tree. The potato crop is successfully sown. Expected harvest in 56 hours. Was it possible for potatoes to mature in just over 2 days? A notification sound echoed in Suming's mind, momentarily catching him off guard. He had always believed plants took over 10 hours to flourish, but this experience suggested otherwise. Nonetheless, Suming remained patient. After all, in typical conditions, potatoes require several months to reach maturity. But with the system's assistance, a mere 2 days and a bit was all it took for the potatoes. Utilizing his earlier know-how, he meticulously watered and fertilized each plant. As expected, a subsequent notification indicated a shorter growth period and heightened yield. He had plans to cultivate other crops, but dusk was setting in. His hunger pangs and fatigue were catching up. After a refreshing shower, Suming changed into fresh clothes from his rental stash and treated himself to a hearty meal. To his astonishment, upon his return, he found the cucumbers had already matured. What would he gain this time?